Okay, so meet Kiara. She is just dropping in for today's class. She's going to see if she manages it, she likes it, and then she is going to sign up hopefully for the rest of the classes as well. All right, so today we will be taking on, I'm just going to mute you, Kiara. Yeah, so we'll be taking on the rest of the features. Like I said, with portraiture, the eyes are, I think, 50% of the face. Getting the eye, being able to express the emotion that you should through the eyes is very difficult. So that's 50%. Once that is done, then the nose, mouth, face, hair, neck, everything comes in the remaining 50%. So we're going to tackle the nose and mouth right now. I think the best way to go about anything as complicated as the face is to break it up into various features. So you can practice the eyes like we did last week. You can practice just the nose and just the mouth like we're doing right now. And then if we get time, I'm going to show you a little bit about how to draw a side profile, which is also something that we've not done. And that can be a little bit of a challenge because there the formula that I'd given a couple of weeks ago, that changes. It's still there in part because the proportions still remain the same, but how you see the face is slightly different. So let's look at the pictures we have. And let me speak about that first. Okay, so this is a side profile of the nose and mouth. This would be a 3/4 view where you just see part of the nose and nostril straight looking forward towards you. And then the other part is hidden slightly. And then this is again the same kinds. And then you have noses like these, which are looking straight at you. Then we have a side profile of the nose. And then these are the faces that are a full side profile. This is still a little angular because you can see the other eye. This is a side profile, but still a little angled. This is a complete side profile because you cannot see the other eyebrow. Maybe a few of the lashes, that's fine. So sorry. That was very enthusiastic of me. We will look at making this mouth first. Ignore the nose. Just make the mouth. In anything we make, obviously the first thing you do is try to look for an internal geometry. So there is always a line, a circle, a square, a triangle, basic shapes that you can draw here. In this case now, we can plot a line from one corner of the mouth to the other corner of the mouth as you see the corner. There is a little bit of shadow also on the side, but that shadow is in the extra space. Anytime you draw a line, it's always good to use that line to first divide it into very objective sizes. So we have a half and 1/4 and 3/4. This is done visually. I don't have a measuring tool, and I encourage you to do these things visually because when you do start drawing, your eye must be able to see spaces and distances and sizes without having to resort to a grid or a scale. Now, once we have divided the mouth in this manner, we get at least one unit, which is this part. Like 1/4 of the line can become one unit. So the width of the line is 1, 2, 3, 4 of these units. And the reason to get that unit is because then we can use that unit to measure other stuff. Like this would be the height of the mouth, more or less. And if we come lower, this is the same unit sideways, coming down. And this is how much the lip comes down. None of this needs to be ever not measured. So how far it comes lower, at what point the center comes, could all still be measured in the same manner as this. So let's say if I were to divide the second part into 2 parts, just this much, this second section, and then into 4 parts, we get the placement of the space, the dip in the upper lip. And we also get a placement of the rise on the left lip, how high it goes, or at what point it goes high. And then once you get this point, from there, you mark this point, which is again, use the scale to figure out how far we have to go. And you easily get this line. And this part is now ready. Okay, so it's as simple or as complicated as this. I'm going to continue to make these lines because I'm going to give you this grid first, and then I'll show you how you can work with this grid even when you're drawing this on your own. So now I'm determining the distance that I need for the lip below. It's somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 the distance. So this is not exactly so much, not exactly so much, but somewhere in between. And it is reasonably flat. Till what point? Till this point. And then we have the line come down from the left, but not from this point. You will notice that the lower lip comes here. Oh, it's too dark there. I'll draw it with the white line instead. So it comes here, comes almost straight and down here. So you see that what we think in our minds that either this will be really round or it'll be straight down. That is where we make mistakes because our brain tells us this is how lips should be. This is how I'm going to do it. And that's not how it works. So let's come to the other side. We have the end of the mouth like this. Here, the proportion is looking a little odd because my line, my center line is not exactly straight. See, this is the straight line, the very thin line. So it's a little higher on the right-hand side. Even that 1 degree makes a big difference. Then let's see at what point we have to draw the top lip. So let's divide this into half, this section into 1/4. Okay, now we get the distance there. And here we more or less have the same distance, so it shouldn't matter. So you come straight onto this side. Here you go up, a little rounded. And you go a little outward, and the shadow will form a line like this. And we get our mouth. Looks like some kind of cyber drawing. But I'm going to help you use this to draw the first set of lips. So I'll be referring to these lines as a pink line, blue line, thick line, thin line, half line, quarter line, and so on and so forth. So if it is getting confusing, please ask me, and then I can redraw and I can clarify. Okay, I'm sharing the image that I have just taken. And I'm going to show you how to start building even that part. So keep that image in front of you. I don't think I'll be able to show you both, but let's see. In sharing, sometimes I can show 2 images. Okay. Are you seeing both images? No. I don't know why. Oh, I've done something here. Sorry, it's the wrong shares. Okay, are you able to see my book along with the picture here? Okay, great. All right, so we start off with the blue, thick blue line to mark the dimensions of the lips. Don't make this too large. So we don't want to make such large lips like the whole handful. Just make it a decent size, about this much. So mark a horizontal line. Now, once you mark this line, you get an idea of the scale of where you have to, or how much you can grow from here. Then we will mark the line at half. Now, if you're not sure where the half point of this line is, put a finger near the line. Once you put a finger, you'll be able to see the distances much better. Very light lines, all these. Now remember, these are guidelines and they must remain on the paper throughout our illustration. We don't erase them at all. Draw two lines on the sides, which are slightly tilted. This is where the mouth is going to end. So we draw those beforehand. Now we have this unit measurement, right? We will draw a line in the second section to mark half point and let this line go through. We don't know where it's going to stop, so it's going to go pretty long. I hope you can see this. If it's too light, just let me know. So we have that line, and then we have a line at half. These are the pink lines that I have made.
Can you exchange the like your drawing in the center and this one at the top? Does that happen?
I think you can do that.
Okay. Okay.
Let's
So
see.
we can. Okay.
Are you able to? Okay, never mind. I'm going to change this share option. And I will just show you my part because then it's a little bigger for you to see, no? And I hope you have the other image in
Yeah.
front of you.
Yes. Right.
Okay, so now we have three pink lines between the two blue lines here. Okay, we are now going to draw the box up. So the same distance that we have here between the first point on the left, like that's 0 and 1, and we'll draw a line till here. So you make a big line and then just use the same measurement for top and bottom. So just use your pencil or your fingers to check if you've got the same measurement on both sides. And you can just draw a very light, inform line running across. Right, so this line will now help us determine where the lip begins. So we first draw, this is the orange line now that I'm making. The first orange line and the second orange line. And I'm going to draw a third orange line over here because the dip in the lips comes over here. I have not drawn that line in our image. Now we get an idea of where our lip will go. Make sure that it is on the left of the half mark on the blue line. It's all on the left side. This is the side of the mouth. This is the top of the lip. And then you draw a straight line down. Now, right now, we're just going to draw straight lines because we want to make this a grid. And then we will look at the original image and then we will flesh this out literally.
I did want to ask though, so the lines between the top horizontal and the middle horizontal, how did you get those? I didn't get
Yeah.
that.
All right. So this is the middle horizontal. This is the first line we drew.
Yeah.
This line is marked as 1 unit tall. So the unit being this much.
Okay.
So I took a measurement. Maybe I'll take it with the brush and I'll show you. So it's so much
Okay.
measurement here, and I take the same measurement up
To the
and
other side.
down. Yeah.
Okay.
So at any point that I'm drawing, I establish some kind of unit within the reference image itself.
Okay. And then the three dotted lines in between, how do you map those out?
That's just draw the line at the half point on this first
And
and
then you do.
half of that as well.
Okay.
Now we do the same thing on the right box. This is from the center to the first block on the right. We mark a line at half point that goes a little high, and then a line between that. Now, there is a part of the lip that goes above the marked, the top pink line. So that we have to do visually. I can give you an even smaller division of this and all, but let's not go there. So this is our point for the other lip and comes down over here. Now, this is not necessarily how you draw it when you see it. Okay, but I want you to be able to do this, so a task like that fully objectively. In time, you will just observe these things and you will know how far lines go. Now let's plot the bottom part. Here, the flatness of the lip is slightly lower than the pink line. So mark it at that. A lot of the shapes and sizes will look deceptively large or small. All this is going to be adjusted later. Then you bring in the line for the lip inside a little bit, come straight down. And look at how your lines are passing through the given grid lines to make the shape. Without shading anything, my lip is looking really big. So I'm just going to let it be. And then as we shade, all this will get adjusted. All right, now let's go to the original image. That's this. And in this image now, we can start shading from the center outward. I tend to do it center outward because it's always easier to figure out expansion rather than coming from outside and then the two sides don't meet, or then there's a big gap in the middle if you're doing it proportionately. So we'll start with this shadow, a line like this. There is a large shadow between the top lip and the lower lip. And then there is a shadow on the bottom of the upper lip. So we'll focus on these shapes, shade those, and then start shading progressively outward from here towards the upper lip and then towards the lower lip. Okay. Now, I have said that we are not going to erase these guidelines. So at some point, we will erase them. But using these guidelines is makes the drawing a lot easier to tackle than not having anything, no guardrails to hold you. This part is now a visual exercise where you will see the bumps in the various parts, like there is a bump over here on the lower lip, sorry, and then it goes down. Then again, there's a bump over here, and then it goes down here, which helps us establish the shape of the shadow. In shading, hold your pencil really far away and try to very lightly grind the pencil on the paper. We are not drawing like this. Okay? So we will only make very light tones first. So get used to how the pencil is behaving first. And don't put in dark tones all in one shot. And don't press the pencil too much, because in pressing the pencil, you might saturate or stiffen the paper so much that you can't then add more shade afterwards if needed. So here the upper lip, though we have drawn the line, at least I have drawn the line coming all this way, it's not that dark over there. The line between the lip and the skin of the lip is not a firm line like we draw a line over here. So we ought not to make this line as sacrosanct as you might think. Our shading, in this case, can be directional. So try shading in up and down strokes, radiating outward a little bit. So this will automatically give you some texture and therefore some dimension to the lips as well. In order to keep your hand light, hold the book. Now here I am reserving the shading. I'm not going all the way to the outside line. I'm carefully going to come close to it and see only the shape that I want to see of the lip here. Once you have made the, say, medium and a medium dark shade, review and see whether you're getting the right shape of the lips. I think they're much rounded here and a little flattish over here. And at this point, you can use an eraser to remove the extra lines of the lip that we have taken all the way to the top, because now they will mislead us. You can leave the vertical and horizontal lines if your guidelines have gone all the way to the top. And at this stage, I will also start darkening a few areas, like the shadow in the corner of the mouth. This shadow doesn't go all the way to the end and become a firm edge. So you can reduce the pressure a little bit as you come towards the end of the mouth and just make the line fuzzy over there. So, Kiara, I have a tendency to over-explain everything. If there are things that you know them, but I just sometimes feel I don't want to leave anyone clueless, because if you don't know it, you don't even know that you don't know, and I take that job very seriously of informing. I mean, a little too seriously. So please forgive me if it's like, of course I know how to do this.
This is my first time even attempting portraiture, so all the guidance really helps.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I did want to ask though, so my pencil is like the point is much sharper. So I'm not really getting the same,
Softness.
yeah, as yours.
Yeah,
So,
never mind. So I'll tell you what, you're probably shading with the tip upright. Try holding the pencil a little further away and then
okay,
try shading, because then you will be touching, making contact with a much flatter and wider edge of the tip. Even if
okay,
it's very sharp, that sharpness will not hamper grating of the pencil on paper.
okay,
While you are shading this, you'll notice that within that gray tone as well, there are multiple other gray tones and lines and creases. And you can start seeing them gradually. The more you look at the subject, the more you will notice every little thing about it. So, in that, notice how the lines on the lip are coming outward and going upward. In a sense, uh, this Ashita will know, they're almost like how when we drawn the lashes, the lines are radiated outward. This side will come to the right, and this side will go to the left and start flattening out. Many places you'll notice that there is a repetition of these kinds of, I guess, the nature of certain features. So identify the places which are lighter. Notice the places where the shading is textural, and it's always a matter of matching the tone based on what is seen in the neighborhood of the tone that you are making. So something is dark only in relation or in comparison to something else next to it, which is light. In the beginning, it's very easy to make things either too dark or too light. But you don't know what is too dark or too light unless you have done it. So continue to do it, and then we will see. Now with pencil shading, here's the trick. You can shade in one direction one way, and then if you want to darken it, shade in another direction. And then if you want to darken it further, change your direction ever so slightly, and you can still continue that. And then at some point, if you really want to add dark tones, that is where you use the tip of the pencil to make sharp lines in the right places. Once this is done, we can move to the bottom lip. So let me know when you're done with this, and I can then explain a little bit about the bottom lip. I'm just going to go get some water. All right, I'm back.
I think my shading is looking more like a mustache than lips.
Yeah, right now it might now because we've not done anything. Wait, let's do the bottom and then let's see how it can look like a fat mustache then. Okay, so the bottom lip is slightly different. It's not as it needn't be tackled in the same way as the upper lip because uh there are a few other things that are happening in the bottom lip. So one thing is that oh, I'm sharing it in the same way. Sorry. Yeah. So one thing is look at the sides, the bottom, the difference between how the sides of the bottom lip are and the bottom of the bottom lip is. And there is a little highlight at the bottom also because that part of the lip protrudes outward over the chin. So if we don't make that little highlight, it often makes the lip look very flat. Then there is a very prominent highlight running through the middle or the center part of the right side of the lower lip as well. But it is not a flat highlight. It has lines running through it. You can see the boundary line of this highlight. And then through that, you see the cracks of the bottom lip. So when we are shading this, first let's make the light colored shading in this section. So you have the section closest to the mouth on the left side. We'll ignore this highlight on the left right now. And then around to the other side and gently ending into nothing on the sides. And then we will tackle not just the shadow on the lower lip, but also the shadow underneath the lower lip, where we will leave the gap, a small gap for the highlight. This highlight is gray, and the highlight on the lip is white. So we want to keep that just the lightest shade of pencil that we can. Okay, so in this now, you can mark where the highlight is going to come. So it comes somewhere here. And with pretty much straight lines, you can mark where the highlight goes. This gives us the area to avoid. Then we can just make a very generic light color throughout the rest of the lip. And for this, I'm not even making the lines in one direction. While we are making this, again, I'm keeping my shading closer to the center than going far too much outward. Because only once we have shaded do we get a clear idea of how much space we are using and how much space we have and how much we need. Now we can start making it darker. So there's a little extra shadow here on the left. This is the shadow that falls off the upper lip. And then a little inside the line that I have drawn. I don't know where you have drawn your line, so you'll have to figure that out. That's where a little bit of the shading of the lower lip begins. Not at this point, definitely not at that point. And now I can start putting in the directional shading. So this is quite an interesting observation you'll see. In the 20s, that's the 1920s, about 100 years ago, you'll see these trends changing in makeup. The idea of fat lips was considered very ugly. So women tried really hard to make their lips look thinner. So they would draw a line on the inside of the lip and then fill that up with color so that their lips would look very slender. Then in the 80s, there was this whole thing about big lips, and they would make a line outside of the lip and make the lips look very plump. Now that has gone on to become such a exercise. My goodness, this whole lip color and all. Millionaires are being made on just how people want their lips to be. But in that, the study of the lip is quite fascinating. So here, if we keep this flat, our lip will start looking really awkward. Like the top is looking like it's pointing there, the bottom is looking like it's pointing here. Lips can also look like they're squinting a little bit. So pay attention to these lines. And you'll notice that in the center, the lines that are looking towards us are a little right of center, and then left or center and left to center, they're all turning a little bit concave in the other direction. It's a very, very subtle turn. It's not like a big U or C-shaped turn. It's a very subtle turn. And in making that, we are also making that broken texture of the highlight. At every point, keep looking at the reference image. There are different kinds of grays in each section. And here a sharp pencil can come in handy to make precise shading wherever needed. Dark here. And as I see it, my lip has become too thick on the left. So I'm going to narrow it a little bit. But I'm not removing the bottom. I'm not erasing this line right now. I'm going to sharpen the pencil a little bit. And now I'm going to start making adjustments. The curve on the left is slightly more curved. Then it's a little flat here. And then it's a little flat like this also. The thing about pencil shading on drawing paper is that you have to encourage the pencil or the graphite and the pencil to settle in the nooks and crannies of the cartridge paper. This is not a smooth paper, and I wouldn't recommend smooth paper for pencil sketching. That little tooth on the paper helps you to sketch better. But that also means that when you're shading in one direction, it's like snow falling on one side of the mountain. The other side is completely bare and only one side gets the graphite because there is a texture on our surface. So when you want to smoothen your shading, go literally into the crevices between the papers to really, sorry, not papers, on the paper surface to really get into the right shade. And then I'm going to start building that dark part. This is just the bottom of the lip, not the little highlight at the bottom. So that highlight is really a reflected light. And if you study a little bit of how spheres are sketched, you will come across the same phenomenon in spheres. On this side, I'm going to make the shadow from there coming below this. There's a shape to the shadow. It's not just straight underneath it. It's a little dark towards the left. And then it becomes a fuzzy shape in a crescent form. Now, if your lips are looking odd, check for the right shape, the right proportion, placement of the lines, the highlights, the tonal difference. Sometimes if you've got the wrong tone, something that is meant to look a little flat can look a little too rounded. Something that is meant to look like it's going behind can look like it is just sitting at the same level as something in the foreground. Like in this case now, the shadow on the left doesn't match shadow in the center, so it's looking really odd. So I'll increase this. And that is not a flat shadow. It's much darker a little over here. And then it becomes darker over here. And my proportions start looking better once I get my shading right. So there's many things that you have to work towards to get your lips to look right. It's not just the shape. My pencil has become so sharp now that it's making very dark tones. Ugh. Now that I look at it, I can see that the top is a little too tall. So I can adjust that just a little bit. This makes me happy. Much better. Right. How's it going? Oh, let's see. Okay, nice. Very nice. Let's see Kiara's as well. Okay, very
I
good.
think I'm struggling a little bit with the shadow though. That's
Yeah.
not really accurate. Like
The
it's
shadow, yeah, so shadow at the bottom. It's okay for your first lips. This is fine.
okay.
Yeah.
Also, I think I made it a little too dark on the top, so it goes
Uh-huh.
up a little.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is there a way that I can blend it out? Like, do I go over it or do I just...
Yeah, so you can make the area around it darker, and
Okay.
that will then make that look less dark. But do a little bit of it, see if it is working. Otherwise, forget it. We are going to make more lips.
Okay.
Okay, so now this is the process that you can use for lips and make maybe a couple more on the same sheet. And now we can move to the nose. So the nose is very subtle. We'll make the nose on the side. If you make the lips on top and the nose below, it'll look a little odd. Noses are usually the most misunderstood face part, I would say. The kinds of noses people make, I feel really sad because it's as if you don't make the enough things in the nose, that nose doesn't exist. That is the attitude with which many people in the beginning attack noses, me included. I have drawn such ridiculous noses because when you draw so much detail in the eye and the mouth, and you say, how is it enough to just draw 3 lines and say this is a nose? That is not fair. But don't get emotionally attached to the fairness of unfairness of the nose's endowments. I'm going to show you how to look at the nose. Basically, we have just this cartilage to draw, which is essentially a line like this. Sorry, yeah. So you have this line. And then you have this line. And everything else is just a shadow to show some sculptedness, which would be a little dark shadow here, a little shadow here, some highlight over here. And highlight is like you don't have to draw it. You have to just not draw something over there. a little bit of the turn of the nose. We often land up doing something like this to show that this exists, and this completely ruins an otherwise perfect looking picture. Don't go there. Do not draw any line over here that cuts across like that. At best, we will shade here in this direction. And that will create the bridge of the nose. We don't have to do anything else. In order to draw this, we can resort to a few shapes, like just the center of the nose often looks like a circle could fit in over there. This may or may not have some proportion, but what the hell, let's just see if we get any proportion over here. Draw a line through the center. In the case of this nose, how does the proportion work? So in making something like this, you get some idea of how far the nose goes. Like if I were to draw, looks like the ends of the nostril come right at the, at the bottom of the circle. But the septum is lower than that. How much lower? Not 1/4 of the circle's diameter, a little between 1/8 and 1/4 is this distance. Somewhere in between that, closer to the 1/8 distance than 1/4. Okay? Then how far do we draw the nostrils? So this is the edge of the circle. Is it half the distance of the diameter? Not really. So is it 1/4? Maybe 1/4 distance on the right. And let's see if it's 1/4 distance on the left. At least it gives you a starting point. All right. Now here, the holes in the nostrils come at about 1/8 of the distance, 1/8 of the circle. And then it just curls inward. We are going to make this a very subtle shade, not a big dark shade, because otherwise this will just land out looking like some Ravan nose. And that's the end of your lovely picture. All right, so let me share that image. Okay, and this time I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to start the picture on your own with the guidelines that I've made. I have to just make an important call right now. So give me 2 minutes and you can take it away. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to start with the circle. I hope you all have started. Then divide it in half vertically, horizontally, extend the lines on both sides. Give yourself the distance of that septum. And look at the curve you need to make for the nostril. It does go outside just a little bit. I've not drawn how much outside. I think that you can figure out now. And here, the edge of the nostril or the skin of the nostril comes a little beyond the 1/4 point on the outside. Sometimes I'm talking with all these points and things like that, I'm wondering whether anybody gets what I'm talking about. I'm just talking to myself, I think. But it's
It
so
just comes back when we're actually doing it, like you hear that, and so that's helpful. Like it's literally like hearing your voice, the
okay.
head.
That's good. That's good. Because otherwise, on blank paper, we have no reference point. And one of the biggest issues in with drawing is to not have that reference point. So we start off anywhere, then there's no comparison of shapes and sizes and placement, and anything is going anywhere. And before you know it, you're just so frustrated, you abandon everything and want to run away from the picture. So at least having some reference points is like having a map. Based on what you have, you can always figure out where you want to go if you feel that you are in the wrong location. Now, don't make too much of the nose going up. Just a little bit is fine. We just focus on this part because the nose bridge will make sense if we are drawing eyes or eyebrows beyond that. Otherwise, you just have this long chimney-like structure over here, which is just lands up looking very ugly. And after you've done about so much, go to the original image and there you will start seeing the shadows accurately. In this picture, the entire nose is shaded very light first, the whole thing. There are very few bright highlights except on the tip of the nose. So we might as well shade the whole thing dark. So shading this entire section dark will now make those nostrils look less protruding and also less flat as compared to if we keep this section light in color and then we only darken the holes of the nostril. I'm still not darkening it right now. So they look like the handlebar of a bike. Let that be. And shade everything else around it. So at the bottom over here, there's a lovely shadow. Shade that. Then there's a nice shadow over here and here. There's a little highlight over here where I suppose you could call it the flare of the nostril, where it protrudes a bit outward. So you keep that slightly lighter. And then goes in over here. So with every layer of shading that you do, you come inward a little bit, just a little inward, inward, inward. And in order to get depth, you ought to shade the darker parts in a lesser, a smaller section than the medium dark parts each time. And once you are done with the gentle shading part, then you can make the outlines a little darker and a little sharper because they are looking pretty sharp. So with noses, you realize that Bechari are very forgiving, not as bad as the eyes and the mouth. Oh, 1 second, my call has come. Okay, I'm back. Now at the base of the nostril, ears now, I'm going to start making it a little dark. There is again a highlight, which I will maintain. So I'll start darkening from just underneath this line over here and not make it one uniform shade, And then from the sides of the nostrils, it is the same medium dark to the corner. And there's a little highlight over here, which I will keep and gently shade the rest. So I do make that dark cavernous shape of the nostril, but not in one tone. And then, not to forget, if there are some shadows around this, that also looks very nice, so that the nose does not look like it's just stuck onto the paper. Now I can start matching the tone everywhere else. I have deliberately not erased this circle and the vertical and the horizontal lines because I want you to see the structure through all the drawing we've done. And it's much, much darker than we'll end up making the shading. So don't be shy. This face has got freckles. Now, in order to draw freckles, I love making freckles. All you have to do is hold the pencil sideways, not on the tip, and just make a slightly dark oval, just shading like that. Invariably, you will make something that resembles a pigmented patch. And depending upon how much pressure you apply, you will get a dark shadow or a slightly light shadow. Which will soon start resembling freckles. And they are always irregular. So please don't make them like polka dots or regular next to each other and diagonals from each other, things like that. You'll be surprised how many times, as much as we think that we can't make a predictable line, patterns is something we very easily make. You can already see I have a pattern going here. And I don't know how we do it. Where subconsciously our hand just falls onto the next place where a pattern might be possible. Love it. Almost looks like a nose, but with the skin of a cheetah or something. Because it's just so concentrated. Okay. How are your noses looking? Nice. Very good, Kiara. Okay. Ashita, you have more shading to do, huh? So in your nostrils, I just want to point out, you have landed up making them a little rounded. So I'll tell you how to resist that temptation. When you are observing the nose, you are probably seeing that entire shadow as one. Whereas if you see this part as one thing, and then the bottom as another thing, you draw it differently. So look at this. Now, this is very much like the approach to this would be like how we would draw a cup. When we look at a cup, like, yeah, this container. When we look at this container, you see the top oval, and then you see the sides, and then you see the bottom. So we'll end up making a shape like this, the sides, and then we'll make the bottom. So we get a flattish, two-dimensional looking object, which we want to convince looks three-dimensional. But how do we add thickness to this? So in this, if we were to just draw one part, which is the bottom part, this, and then draw the top like this, leaving a gap between the two, we have now added a lip, and that gives the thickness to this two-dimensional shape. Then a little from the inside, we will take the sides, bottom. So see what has happened over here. Just by leaving this open, you create the illusion of thickness on this object. And here it is just plain and simple. So in terms of the nostril, if we see it like this, we are then forced to make the side much bigger and much more prominent. It's exactly the same as this, but you will be forced to shade this just because of how your eye is looking at the nostril. And then it starts becoming like what we don't want. Far too prominent with a very, very dark shadow. And there is no going back from this. The proportions might be exactly the same, but it's the shading in the places that we have identified we want to shade that make all the difference. So if I take the same thing and break it up as this, I have made the curve, but I've not joined it. And then I have made the nostril like this. See, it's the same thing. I've really not changed the shape too much. I'm not committed to making a dark hole through and through. And I can make this slightly lighter, then connect this, the medium shadow. And it looks much more relaxed, I would say. This one looks like a bull out to cure someone. And this one is a little more relaxed, right? It's all in the what line you represent where and how you shade what where. It's only that. And only in the face does it become so strict and unforgiving. Simply because we are just programmed to see the slightest of uh, nuance in the face and recognize whether a face is angry or whether it's happy or it's somebody we know. Because think evolutionarily speaking, our survival has depended on reading these signs. So the brain gives a lot of importance to that. So I'm sure with the people around you, you can see their face and know exactly that something's not right, either in a good way or in a bad way. And it's the same face. In fact, all of us have the same number of features, yet we even recognize faces differently. And in that, the subtlety of what's happening in the brain. They don't really have to throw a tantrum if they're upset, but you can tell just from the curl of the mouth or just by the stoop of their gait that you need to either ask them something or you have to avoid them and just get out of the house. Okay, so yeah, so this is like I said, it's like a litmus test. Whenever you are approaching portraiture, especially sketching portraiture, and making it as realistic as possible, this is an exercise you should do periodically to check your flexibility, I would say. Maybe in yoga or exercise terms. This is like one um, like running a marathon for runners. It tests whether or not everything is in place. So in the case of sketching or in terms of your art ability, here are the few things that you are sharpening every time we do any of the classes. The first most important thing is control over your line. Your hand has to be really steady. You should be in charge of the drawing, and you cannot. So, people who say, no, I wasn't using the right pencil, they are not in charge. They're allowing the pencil to take charge of their line, which is bound to happen. How will you gain any control until you know them well enough and can trust the pencil well enough? And the pencil can trust you to do what you want it to do. So, that is, again, a large portion of all the exercises that we do through the year. The second is the ability to draw what you see, not what you think you see. The brain is actively giving you information about what you're seeing. So it always comes in interpreted. But when you're drawing, you're forced to focus on a particular reference for so long, and you're meant to see it so objectively that you should be able to translate that on paper exactly how you see it and not how the brain wants you to see it. So when you see a face, the brain gives you the information that it thinks is important to you. But when you see a face, it doesn't matter whether they are a person you know or you don't know, or for that matter, when you see a face, you should attempt to draw it as if it's not even a face, it could be a plant. And you should be able to draw a plant with as much accuracy as you would need to draw a face. So when we draw a plant, we are only looking at the lines and shapes and tones and color and trying to replicate that. So the connection between the eye and the hand is the other thing. And lastly, of course, it is how so here's you have ability, then you have the eye, hand-eye connection. It's not coordination also, it's just the connection between the two. And yeah, being able to put all the various elements together in the right proportion, at the right scale, that again takes a lot of practice. So what is happening on paper, other than the fact that you are in control of the line, you should also be able to see on a 2D surface a translation of the 3D object that you want to make. So you should be able to measure visually, see spaces which are blank versus spaces which are shaded in with the same amount of objectivity. So just only these three things that we have to work on. And once you know that this is all there is to it, then you can keep checking how objective is my observation, how strong is my line. It gives you something tangible to check. Okay, so you can use the same principle to make the rest of the mouth and nose also. By no means is this the only way that you measure stuff. I have given you such a loose way of measuring spaces and distances. You can start from any point. You can figure out your own geometry in that object, and you should be able to, as long as you know how to proportion things and you get the proportion more or less right, you should be able to do it in your own way, which I heavily encourage. Because I cannot predict that every time you're going to get lips that are just turned that much, or a nose that is just this proportion where the nostrils are only so far away from the center. But you can start like this and say, okay, maybe here I can add an extra guideline to draw something more. Okay, any questions?
I did want to ask, so with the nose, you said like when you're drawing the bridge, you maintain the highlight, right?
Mm-hmm.
By shading outwards.
Mm-hmm.
At what point, obviously, I'm just looking at the nose in isolation, but if I'm drawing it with the eyes, at what point do you know when to stop like the shading? How do you blend it into the cheeks and then, make it seamless with the eyes? How do you do that?
There isn't a point actually. The whole thing is a seamless shadow going
Okay.
from dark and just at the corner of the nose bridge towards the bottom or just above the cheekbone. So it's just there. So you just make it. Like we made the transition from the tip of the nose into the nostrils, the same way. You
Okay.
draw it as you see it.
I will attempt that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One quick tip about making mouths. There's only one mouth over here which is open. And I'm going to, if you give me just 5 minutes, I'm going to do a quick sketch of that. You don't have to do it because it'll take a lot of time. But I want to show you how to observe this. This is very important. So mouths will at some point open and we will see teeth. And the worst thing that happens when drawing teeth is that we are very tempted to draw this tooth in isolation. And
Mm.
our teeth land up looking like something really horrible is stuck in it, or the person has been eating too much tobacco, or I mean, it's the worst. So in this case, because again, this mouth is looking to the side, a few things are happening over here. One is the teeth are in a recess. They're not right here where the mouth ends. So you don't have like a wall of teeth just underneath the lip, which is an observation which we somehow miss. We feel that the teeth are there, the mouth is open, so we have to draw it right there. We don't. We draw it where they're supposed to be. So they are a little inside, and they often have a shape like this. There's some shape in which the jaw has teeth where the incisors are lower and the other teeth are higher. So you will draw them in a curve. And then beyond that, you will draw the mouth. So look at how much beyond there is. If I were to draw this as the center of the mouth, now this is looking sideways. Almost half of the upper lip, there is no teeth. And then on the right, again, up to the end, the teeth are only in this section. So when you're drawing these teeth, you feel that I'm drawing the mouth of a person, but the teeth are looking like they belong to a rabbit. Is it going right? But it is. If you give the shadow, it will go right. Secondly, we land up making our teeth very white. I'm going to show you what white actually looks like. So this is white. This is our paper color. Look at how dark the tooth really is. So you must shade the tooth a little bit at least. Otherwise, this is how it looks, like chiclets. Horrible. We don't want it to look like that. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to sketch it. I'm not going to shade it much, but give you an idea of how that mouth can look as well. So without making too many lines and too many guidelines and all, I'm just going to do a rough sketch of this, starting again from the center line. This is the bottom. I'm just doing it visually. Eventually, you will do this visually as well. The guidelines are only because we are beginners here. Draw the shape of the inner part of the lip. Also, the inner part of the lip and the outer part, the upper lip and the lower lip, don't start at the same point. There's an overlap. So over here, the lower lip will emerge from underneath the upper lip here. It does not start at this point. So this again gives us some dimension. Then I have the mouth coming like this. I'm not drawing the line all the way to the end because it will otherwise look odd. And now the teeth. So the teeth are here, almost touching here, just a little inside. Go up and like this. And then I do see that there is a line running through between the teeth, but resist the temptation of drawing that line through and through. I'll shade this and the teeth will look at least attractive. In the end, our picture has to look attractive, unless you, of course, are making a troll or something. Then the shading of the teeth is gradual. So it's a little darker on the inside, lighter towards the center, and then it goes and becomes dark again. And then each of the teeth also has a shadow underneath the mouth. Sorry, not the mouth, the upper lip. And we can make this dark. And you can keep the lines fuzzy if they are fuzzy in the reference image. Now, when I shade everything else, all of this will start making sense. All right. Okay, so that's it. Where am I? Oh, here I am. Okay. Okay, so you have lots to do with this. And Ashwita, you also have the eyes. So if you feel like it, if you want to attempt a full face, please go ahead and attempt a full face. And the side profile, I will tackle next week. There is, in the Tuesday class, they have asked for an abstract painted face. This was an exercise that I had done last year with them. So I will do that with your batch as well. That is that's like a very free flowing exercise. It's just
I think
splash
I've
in.
done that one before.
You had? Okay. So that's good fun. And it's like a good icebreaker. After all the serious, then you do this, okay, all out. Let's just make all sorts of faces. It's a nice one. Cool. So if you still have any questions, please post them on the group. And Kiara, do you want me to add you to this group so then you can be part of the discussion? And you can also share your pictures. And then if you need me to comment on it, then I can help you with that as well. Okay.
I will get in touch with you personally as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I just might take a little longer to respond because I'm
That's it.
haphazard like that and responding messages.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.